Welcome back. My name is Brittany Delk. I am the creator and host of You Said It, Let Me Remind You, the YouTube series. Before we begin, I would like to preface today's episode with a warning. We will be having a very heavy discussion about depression, suicidal thoughts, and other triggering topics. But we will also be discussing ways for you to get help and to heal. And remember, whatever you are going through, there is joy and light on the other side. And I am not alone in this discussion. I am joined by clinical psychologist Dr. Adolph Brown III. He's also a child and family expert, also known as Doc. Dr. Brown, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Outstanding. How about yourself, Brittany?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I appreciate you taking time to squeeze us in. As I mentioned earlier, that this is going to be a discussion about, for those who are suffering in silence and ways for them to get help. Dr. Brown, if a patient came to you and they said, whenever I feel like I'm struggling with my mental health, I like to isolate or suppress my emotions, what would that signal to you about their potential upbringing and what experiences they may have had that made them think that's the best way to handle it?
Brittany, one of the things that says is that that person is carrying a lot of stuff. We don't necessarily know right away if it's trauma. It could be something like shame, or being humiliated in the family, or not having a voice in the family. But the way I describe it, Brittany, is it's like a person having two backpacks, one that you see and one that you don't. And that one that we don't see is like the most important, because if they say they're suppressing one thing, you can't suppress emotions. Emotions fight even harder to come out. So when we talk about if those emotions are trauma related, one of the things that I tell my clients, I say in my seminars, is that we can't heal what we don't reveal. So it has to come out uh, on your terms where you can actually regulate it. Now, if you don't allow it to come out, it's going to come out anyway. And what that causes us to do, we bleed on people who didn't cut us. So imagine that. Imagine that you're carrying that and it's suppressed, and you are a husband, you are a father, you are a team member, an employee. You're suppressing it, but guess what? It's gonna come out. And because you're suppressing it, it's gonna come out when you least expect it and with whomever's around when it chooses to. So we bleed on people who didn't cut us. And I don't think there are many people that would be okay doing that.
Yeah. One thing I noticed you mentioned was talking about regulating your emotions. And I've noticed when I was starting my healing journey, I heard a lot about, being able to process your emotions and be able to regulate them. But what does that actually entail? What conversations do I need to have with myself or with others to better process what I'm feeling and notice how to better express that?
The processing isn't the first step. The first
Mm.
step, the first step is not running from them, facing them. So I like to tell my clients to pause, stop running, pause. And depending on where they are with regards to their confidence level, and basically in their self belief, I'll tell them, feel it, set a time, set 60 seconds or 90 seconds and feel it. Actually feel it. The dreams sometimes that they tell me about, or even some of the things that are happening in reality, it tells me that they're running from, feeling the rage, running from addressing whatever it is that's chasing them, because that's what emotions will chase you down until they catch you. So the first step is feeling it, and knowing that you are in control of it and it's not in control of you. All I just said is you regulate them. That's it. You're regulating them because you're not running from them. You're not avoiding them. But to regulate, you got to face. And that's the part that most people are the most afraid of, because the brain wants to protect us from harm. The brain doesn't teach us to be correct. It basically wants to keep us alive. So if something hurts you once, guess what the brain's going to do? It's going to make sure that you don't have that, or try to ensure that you don't have that feeling again. So when I can get someone to sit with it and they actually survive it, it's like, I'm all right. And guess what? And sometimes you're going to feel that way again and again and again until you don't. But that first step that most people skip over is understanding that it's okay to feel it. And guess what? It may feel overwhelming. It may put you right back to the point where, it was the most devastating thing that you ever experienced. But what you'll learn is emotions are only visitors. That's it. They're visitors. And once you realize that you have somebody that can't necessarily come to you and squat, squat, not leave, you're regulating. You're in a position to regulate.
And I think that's so important that you mentioned about you'll feel it and then you may feel it again because I noticed when I was doing the inner work, sometimes I would be like in a different environment and I would feel triggered and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm supposed to be cured. I'm supposed to be healed.
No.
Why do I feel it again? Like, no, I failed all my hard work. Like, call my therapist. I
Oh,
need it back. I need a new session. And it's just like, no, that's just, we're humans. You are going to feel it. And sometimes
that's
you may
right.
feel it now. It could be 10 years from now. And then you may feel it
Yes.
again. And you're just like, sometimes you're hard on yourself. Like, okay, that means I didn't do the work. That means I need to work harder. And I'm like, yes, we are our greatest project, but also I don't want it to make us feel like we are Home Depot, like we're constantly having to build ourselves and always feel like there's something wrong with us all the time. There's all these leaks. Like I just feel that was just so important that you said that because we can be, especially myself, hard on myself whenever you are triggered, and that's just normal.
Yes, it is normal. And so we go from that not running to regulating. A part of regulating that we sometimes skip is regulating is not just the emotions. Regulating is also the experience of being present. So when we're the only creature that when we think of certain things, our brain doesn't know if it's reality or not. It assumes that it's actually happening in the here and now. So guess what? That means we're not necessarily choosing to think that because sometimes things will initiate it. And I just use the word initiate instead of saying trigger. Sometimes it will initiate the thought, but guess what? That's all it is a thought, not minimizing or diminishing what happened, but it's not happening now. So regulating is also, your feet being where your head is. That's the definition of being present. If I'm on this interview with you right now, I'm not thinking about the blowout that we had on our bus, uh, you know, traveling to South Carolina the other day. You know, could it have been traumatic? Possibly. But guess what? I have to be here with you. So I will have my clients stomp their feet just to say that's an exercise in being present. Stomp your feet and now make sure your head is where your feet are. If your head are not where your feet are, you're not in that moment.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you are safe and everyone on the bus is safe. Let's say that
Thanks.
first.
Thanks. I appreciate
Your
it.
safety is more important than this interview, so I'm glad you're here.
No, 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 Brittany, what you're doing, and I'm so ecstatic to be with you. What you're doing is transforming lives. Literally, if I had to walk to be here. Look, and you're in Atlanta, shucks, I'm in Atlanta all the time.
Oh, yes, we'll
All
have
the
to meet soon.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. I'm a huge cheerleader and fan.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think it's also key, like what is key to remembering or being able to decipher what's a thought and what a possible trigger is telling you. Because sometimes when you are that deep in your depression or anxiety or having those suicidal thoughts, sometimes they're conflicting. Sometimes those thoughts feel so real to you. So when are you able to, how's a way to decipher what's actually your reality and what something, or I like to say like the devil or somebody is trying to tell you about yourself, whether it's beating yourself up or saying something negative versus what you really are.
Definitely. One of the things I do is something called thought stopping. And and well, I have a band. It's called the Balcony Band that people can get with the instructions on how to use it. But it's something as simple like a rubber band. And basically, when you have those thoughts, you snap your rubber band. Cognitive psychologists call that, of course, thought stopping. But what they say is that there has to be a stimulus that's large enough to get your attention and then to help you redirect that negative energy, those negative thoughts. So thought stopping, and I don't think people remember back in the day, Michael Jordan. when he played basketball in college, and even early in the NBA, he would have a like a wristband, but it was kind of up towards his elbow, and you see him snapping it sometimes. From my understanding, that sometimes he would get thoughts. I mean, he was one of the best players, if not the best. He would get thoughts. You're gonna miss this dunk. You're gonna miss that, and he was taught that to snap, and it works. It works. In fact, I looked. I actually looked to see if I had mine on today.
Oh. Do you
Matter of
have yours
fact,
on? Let's see it.
I don't, but my nephew
Oh.
does. You want me to get it? You want
Sure.
to see it? Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Hold on a second.
Hi.
Hi, how are we doing?
Good. How
Wait,
are
did he say a
you?
bunch about you? So, so my nephew is also my assistant, and I noticed in our meeting this morning that he's wearing his balcony band.
Okay. Oh, nice. What is
All
this?
day, all day.
Does it have
Sure,
writing? What does it say on it?
it
What
says
does it
balcony
say?
band.
It just says
Balcony.
balcony band on it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And now, yeah.
Oh,
So now
okay.
I'll tell you about the balcony.
Okay.
There's a book by a woman named Joyce Landorf Heatherly, and it's called Balcony People. She came up with the concept, but it's a concept that comes from psychoanalytic psychotherapy. I'm a psychoanalyst, so the concept is in life we have basement people and we also have balcony people in our lives. The balcony people in our lives are cheerleaders. They're in the balcony and they're cheering for us. And they're not just cheering for us. Anytime that we're down, they're reaching down to pull us up. So balcony people are those people that when they interact with people they don't even know, they look for the gold and not the dirt,
Mm.
always looking for the best. But we also have basement people in our life. And basement people, an example, and we don't criticize them or judge them. Those are the people whose backpacks are just so heavy and they haven't done the work to empty them. They're in the basement of life. So those are the people that we know that wake up every day looking for opportunities to be offended.
Mm.
Exactly. Or I tell people sometimes basement people are people who basically drive trash trucks looking for someone to run into. So in employment settings, we would know basement people. Any supervisor would know a basement person by being on the road program. Road stands for retirement on active duty. So basically, their backpacks are just so tremendously heavy that their life is filled with darkness. So that's why I say we don't judge them; we understand them. And in the darkness, imagine a society if all we did was go around understanding that everybody's carrying something you know nothing about. Now, not that we have to be trauma informed, just realizing that every person you meet is carrying something that you know nothing about. You know what? First of all, we would all stop taking things personally.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that society where we stop taking things personally and people don't think about us as much as we think they do? If somebody said something to offend us, guess what? We are thinking of walking around at night. Why did they say? Guess what? They're sleeping. So, so the point is, I think if we all tempted to empty the stuff that we carry, and I say empty, I use healing loosely because that
Mm.
journey is different. That journey is different for everyone, and it actually is operationalized differently for everyone. Healing for me might mean, um, I'm getting through the week without crying.
Mm.
So once I started getting through the week without tears, to me, that was my hallmark of healing success. For others, it's I never think about that again. So that standard is a little higher.
Mm.
So it's different for everyone. And no particular person can tell you what healing means.
Yeah.
Only it's so relative. It's what the experience that they want on the other side of it.
For your nephew, kind of what was the wake-up call or the moment you realized that something needed to change that led you to wanting to try out the band? And how was that process with you using it in the beginning?
Wearing the balcony band has been very impactful because, every day I feel like we need that reminder. You can read a book, you can watch TV or any of those kind of things, but every day you go through certain things and you need that reminder. It's just like, wait, I'm feeling down on myself, or this person made me mad today at the office or something. So there's a lot of things on a day-to-day basis that will try to bring you down to the basement. And I feel like that balcony ban is just a reminder to say, you know what, I am above the basement, or not only am I above the basement, but I can also be that vessel for other people to say, hey, listen, whatever you're going through, whether you want to tell me or not, I can still help you come to the balcony. Mhm. So my trauma as a kid is I dealt with a parent who was addicted to drugs. So on a day-to-day basis for me, it was, how do I overcome, what's in front of my face every single day? Whether my father was clean for, a couple months, or whether he was clean for a year, I never knew whether I would come home and see my dad from, coming home from work, or whether he wasn't going to be there because now he was out, doing drugs. So for me, the balcony ban has been very impactful because I now have two boys of my own, and I realize that they're always watching. So one of the things that my father probably didn't realize is I was always watching. So his trauma kind of affected me in a way such that it almost gave me an addictive personality towards certain things. And for me, it was like, you know what? I don't have to be, what's presented to me every day. I can always stay in the balcony, and, I could still also be that vessel for my father to pull him up when he was ready. So the balcony ban is a reminder for me of that every single day.
Yeah. With this discussion, we've been talking about those who are suffering in silence and how they can get help. For you, I know with this conversation, it shifts a lot when especially comes to men, where there's that societal narrative of men supposed to be like, tough, they're not supposed to express their feelings, all that
Sure.
stuff, because if not, they're called a wuss, and you fill in the blanks
Right.
of the other stuff they would like to call
Right.
people.
Right.
For you, what was that process for you to learn how to process your emotions and to be able to communicate that in a healthy manner?
One of the biggest things for processing my emotions was something that my uncle helps me with every day. And you talk about that trauma and not being able to, talk to other people about it, was this, the smile every single day, right? To smile, because one of the things that kind of stops me from being in the basement is knowing that, you can take any situation, you can smile through that situation, and you don't have to necessarily tell everybody what's going on, but you can still smile, and that alone will help you overcome, pretty much any of those hardships on a day-to-day basis. It's how you carry it in your backpack. If that's something you're going to do, it's how you carry it as well.
So yeah, Brittany, trauma is real. My nephew, for your listening audience, father would take him to crack houses as a kid. He wouldn't necessarily go in, but he was sitting outside of it, watching what was going on. And when you were hungry, I mean, what did he get for you?
Bread. Yep.
So now my nephew, a part of his healing journey, and I think that's what I wanted to add earlier, healing journey. Um, even scars sometimes um, might not hurt, but they're still visible. And the pain that the heart gets, um, again, the heart's not even visible, but that pain can come and go. So I say journey, not to ever set anyone up to beat themselves up for everybody else around is doing better than me. No, it's relative. But my nephew came from New York here with me, and is one of the most phenomenal people that you could ever meet. And now he shares his story with students. There are a lot of students who are suffering in silence, embarrassed because they have someone in their family addicted to substances. He talks openly about it, and he tells them, guess what? It still affects me. So he says, sometimes as a husband and a father, I'm sitting back thinking, like where I could have been or would have been if this didn't happen. And he says, but guess what? I'm moving through it.
Both of you, just hearing your stories, it just seems like you have such a tight-knit relationship. I want to start with you, Dr. Brown. Kind of speak to me on how just hearing and knowing so much of your nephew's story, how that has shifted in you and how that has strengthened your relationship with him, just knowing how much you played a pivotal role in helping him become the man who he is today and helping him sort of work through and sort through some of his trauma.
Well, of course, not ever being his therapist or counselor, but his uncle.
Yeah.
Um, I think he chose me. Literally, he chose me because he knew my trauma. Uh, my dad had a midlife crisis. I'm married to my mom, 5 kids. Went back, left Virginia, went back to North Carolina with his parents, and my mom had to fend for herself. We went from lower middle class to inner city poverty overnight. My brother, in my father's absence, my grandparents were extremely important. They were farmers, hours away. But my oldest sibling, 9 years older than me, became my hero. And he was murdered when I was 11. So where I'm sitting today in this office, my home is 6 blocks from the projects I grew up in. So my give back wasn't the guy to get it and keep it moving. My give back was to get it and bring it back to help others. So my nephew knew that. He knew even since the years we've been working together, he's seen me kind of stare into space sometimes because somebody has said something that reminds me of something my brother would say to me. So it's a journey. It's a journey. But you have to know that you are, and people use control. True control is an illusion when it comes to humanity, but we can regulate things. And I can regulate whether or not I want to process that emotion because it's a memory. That's what it is. It's a memory. So do I want to spend time with it at that moment or do I want to revisit it later?
For your nephew, what do you remember from being from a young age about your uncle that made you realize he was a safe space for you? Because I know
For
at that point, when you're dealing with so much trauma, it is hard to kind of trust certain people
sure,
and you
sure,
start becoming
sure,
guarded and you question a lot of things. So what
sure.
do you remember that made you feel that your uncle is a safe space for you?
Well, first, I think one of the biggest things is about having a positive role model in your life.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us grow up with trauma and then we don't have a positive role model, which then leads to different outlets, which can lead you down so many different paths. So I think one of the biggest things for me is when I first saw my uncle, I said, that's somebody that I'd like to be like. That's somebody that I'd like to learn from, which is why he said, I sought him out. One day I just showed up in Virginia Beach and said, listen, you know, it's
Mhm.
time. And I think one of the biggest things is, especially after, like I said, having boys of my own and having a family of my own, I wanted to be what he is for his family and what he did for me. I wanted to be that vessel for others. And I knew, the easiest way to do that is to, get it right from the source, which I think a lot of us don't have that opportunity to get it right from the source or to even know where that source is.
Delbert, I think it would be interesting for the audience to know you're kind of putting me up on a pedestal,
Mhm.
but I think it would be interesting for them to know who I am in this space, in what I do, and how we interact
All right.
on the real.
So So, one of the biggest things is I get a big kick in the rear end on a day-to-day basis, and that's really it. One of the biggest things I would say from Uncle is he's probably one of my biggest accountability partners, right? And I think that's one of the things that people need to have. So when he talks about real talk, that's him saying, you know, I'm 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 a clinical psychologist. Like he just separated them, but I'm also your uncle and I love you. And because I love you, I'm not going to let you fall short. If you fall short, then that means that I fall short. right? And that's something that he's not going to allow because of his successes and things like that. And, I want to bring myself up to that same pedestal. And I think that's one of the biggest things, having that accountability partner. He makes sure every single day that if I have a goal and I explain that goal to him, he's going to make sure that that goal is reached the correct way with a foundation, which is, I think, is a lot of thing that, that we're missing today, is that foundation when you have that trauma.
Well, and it's a two-way street, Brittany. I learned as much from him or more. You know, I'm no longer a young person.
Bring chicken. Don't let them convince you otherwise.
Exactly.
Hey, Brittany, our children are from 23 to 36. We have 8 of them.
Mhm.
And my granddaughter just left the office because her mom works here too. So, he easily could have been my child, but at the
Which
same,
most people think
yeah,
when they see us. They're like, oh, or when he goes into a master class, they look right at me like, that's it.
yeah, but it's a two-way street because he teaches me things about the younger generation. Um, I want to be able to reach everyone, and I go into places wanting to reach everyone, but I'm realistically, I know that I won't be some people's cup of tea, and that's okay because I'm a coffee drinker. So the point is, however, I learned just as much from him. He's got more grit than most people I've ever met, based on just based on the things he's been through, but being able to go through those things, not healed, but still function. What he's been through, in my experience as a clinical psychologist, is enough for someone to not only have suicidal ideation, but for someone to kind of live in that moment.
Yeah.
And he's had the thoughts and things, but he's told me all the times that how he's brought himself out of it. So I admire him, and have a lot of respect for him.
I think when it comes to having a support system, while the intentions may be pure, sometimes the approach or verbiage may not be all the way there because everyone doesn't have a background in psychology. So when we sometimes lean towards family members or friends, they're trying their best because you hear so much, oh, you can reach out to me. I'm here to help. I know I had an experience where I was feeling anxious and I reached out to a friend and I'm talking to her and then she was like, oh, yeah, I can relate. And then she just started listing all her problems. And I'm like, not right now. I don't have the
Right,
emotional
right,
capacity to help
right,
you. I'm coming to you
Right.
so you can help me. So, and she means well, and I know her character, so I know it's not intentional, but a lot of people, they may not even be aware of that's how they're doing it. So, Dr. Brown, what are some things that people need to keep in mind when they are trying to be a good support system or hold someone accountable and be there to help them so they make sure that they're trying their best to have the best approach or language when speaking with someone about whatever they're
well
going
one
through?
well, one thing is that there's a lost art of listening.
Mm.
Most people are listening to respond. So the first thing I would say is to listen. That's without even us asking or inquiring what the person wants or needs from you. So I'm not to come out to say, hey, so do you want help or do you want me to listen? And I haven't even heard what you have to say.
Right.
So it's almost as if, like time is more relevant than you are.
Right.
So I say listen first. And after I've listened, I'll say, now, how can I help you most? And sometimes people say listening was all I needed. And can I just kind of lay things on you every now and then? Or sometimes people say, well, I'm at a crossroads and I don't know what to do. And I might say, write a pros and cons list.
Right.
Or and we have to also remember that clinical psychology is what I do. It's not who I am. There's some people that actually don't differentiate. If they're a judge in a courtroom, then, at family outings, they're still like, holding a gavel. We're human. And there's so many different ways that we can differentiate ourselves for healthiness sake. I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a nephew, I'm a father, I'm a husband. So guess what? You know, I do clinical psychology, I do this other stuff. So whenever one basket is crushed, and they get crushed all the time, whenever one basket is crushed, guess what? I have some others. So it's never the end. Not only that, I have a basket called me. And I do my best not to crush me. So if all those baskets were crushed, I still have me. And nephew, she talked about how I might talk to you as a clinical psychologist.
Mhm.
Would you share a conversation we just had on the tour bus where you drove across the you
Oh,
passed
the
the
double
car,
line. Yeah.
and I want you to tell her this is a real talk show.
This is
Tell her the truth.
okay. So
I want to say thank
yeah.
you. Glad both of you are here safe. I told Dr. Brown the same thing. I
Yeah,
heard
right.
it was a little
Right.
traumatizing, so I'm
Right.
glad you guys are both here safe.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
So we had a nice conversation and so I went over the double lines when we were driving and
Just
not
pass
only am I
around.
executive assistant, but I'm also the driver. He would never let anybody drive for him unless it's a family member because I know him personally. I know his family. I know his kids. I know his wife. You know what I mean? So to put them in my hands is also, a great honor, right? So that's one of the best positions you could have in this office is to be the driver for his wife, himself, or just any of the people that we're bringing to, deliver that message, right? And I went over the double lines, and he woke up and he said, nephew, went over the double lines just now. Don't do it again. Right? Just don't do it again. Right? So I said, okay. And I thought that was it. Right? Because, like you said, sometimes there's a clinical psychologist version of Dr. Adolph Brown, and then sometimes there's the husband and father and uncle of Dr. Adolph Brown. When we finally got to our destination, which was maybe about 15 minutes later, I got my uncle, okay, which was then so you went over the dotted line, you went over the double lines? Yes, sir. Don't let that shit happen again. How would you feel if I was driving and your kids were in the back and you went over the double line? And I said, I wouldn't have liked that. So then that's exactly how I expect for you to operate on a day-to-day basis when you're behind the wheel.
Dr. Brown, you're so just like positive and so smiley, and then hear you be so stern. It's just like, oh.
Exactly.
So
And that's the real talk. That's
Your
what he's
nephew is
saying.
like, you don't know what I've been through with him.
Yeah.
so
I don't get the clinical. I don't get the psychologist. I
Right.
get unk, right? I get unk, right?
He
So
was like, he
yeah.
doesn't smile like that with me. It's all
No,
threatening and
nope,
scolds and a
yep.
belt.
but the joy is real.
Yeah.
I tell everyone, enthusiasm is my go-to. The Greek derivative of enthusiasm is in theos. That's God in me. In theos, enthusiasm. So how in the world do I profess to show people the true light? Like this.
Mm.
And my nephew is one of the most positive people you ever meet. But look at him now. No, you just smile.
I know.
You just smile.
Now,
I told
yeah.
her I did a corporate event yesterday, and my theme was helping them become like F1, Formula One racers. Teamwork that you're not like confident in someone, you have faith in them that they're gonna do exactly what they're supposed to do. And my nephew's standing up in the front like this. So I turned to him and I asked, what, you remember the question I asked somebody?
You said he said my nephew's sitting over there looking like he's well, I forget the
I
reference.
said FOI.
FOI, yeah. And then he goes, one of the gentlemen go, yeah, he is pretty serious, but he's a lot fresher than they are then. So So like I told you before, a lot of people do want to, you go through those things and you're more tough and, myself, that's probably something that I developed over the years of going through said trauma. And I'm not, there's nothing, I'm very happy. I'm always positive. I'm always thinking, like you said, but the smile is what lets people know that, hey, it's okay to come and talk to me. It's okay if you want to approach me, even though I might have the best information. If I have that mean face or, the resting face, as they call it, right? I'm going to be less approachable and less able to give my message to maybe that person who also has the same face as me and just looking for a friendly face.
Yeah. It makes me also think about those who sometimes use that smile to hide what they're really going through. Dr. Brown, what are some signs to kind of pick up that someone is, going through a hard time? But because those who are like, they're smiling, they're still
Right.
being their
Right.
bubbly selves, they're having fun with each other, but then behind the closed door, they're really going through it. And then
Right.
sometimes it leads to those moments where it's unfortunate they're
Definitely.
no longer here. And then you have those friends who feel that guilt, like, what did I miss something? What did I not see? Because it seemed like they were fine.
Right. So let me just first all say, everyone wears masks. We act like, there are people out here that are maskless. No, every single person you meet is a part of being human. It's a part of simulating. It's a part of acculturation, that everyone wears a mask. And I really do think that essence, if there was an essence of our humanity, it would be to actually find out who we really are. And we're born into families. We get roles put on us immediately. And guess what happens? Sometimes we live up to them, sometimes we rebel against them. So neither one, it might be our authentic self. So yeah, but one of the things that people do use their smile, like everything's okay. And one of the things to do is say, hey, how are you today? Just as simple as that. And knowing who you're talking with. Most of us know about each other, but knowing someone knowing someone is at a much deeper level. How do we start all of our meetings?
With prayer.
And then I go around doing what?
Asking everybody, how you feeling today? And then if you say, oh, I'm feeling okay, and say, well, what can we do to make it better? What can we make it to be a great day?
So that's not a backdoor way, but that's just a way of saying that it's not a burden to me. And I was doing that. I didn't invent that. Jobs that I had early on where I wasn't on the path to become a clinical psychologist. I saw people actively kind of, like you said, open themselves to allow someone to vent. And there's sometimes we go around in our team and everybody's great. There's sometimes we go around and somebody just says, I'm okay. And then the next thing they know, they're in tears. So asking someone, first of all, I'm not saying, if I were to tell you, Brittany, that there's some scientific investigatory, way that we could just ask certain questions, everybody is different. Every human being is a study of one. And this, as much as we talk about this, and, I love the experts that you have on your show. I mean, I vibe with it. But I think we sometimes overlook some of the basics that every single person you meet wears a mask. They could be the healthiest person ever, but guess what? The world teaches that. The world teaches us to be almost what works. And it takes time to know someone as opposed to know about what they're presenting to you. Even in therapy, people wear masks. So what I do there is I'll get a mirror, or there's a mirror in my office. And, basically it's one of those mirrors that one side is regular, the other side is magnified. And if I feel like there's an impasse, and the impasse is this person, it's paying me when they're not even, allowing me to help because the trauma is a true buffer. Guess what? Look in the mirror. And I want you to tell the mirror, you're not telling me, I want you to tell that person in the mirror what they need to hear. And Brittany, I got to tell you that that's some of the most powerful intervention that I do. You said you were on a journey, and just out of curiosity, when you first started, did you go in and your heart said, "Bam"? It was a floodgate.
Oh no, I'm a very private person, so I didn't even want to. When finally found the perfect therapist that I wanted, I didn't even really want to say too much. I
Right,
was just like, ah.
right, right. And that's and it's human nature. It's human nature. So when I do that mirror, I can't tell you. And it requires so much patience on my part because you get people that are stubborn when it comes to divulging. I mean, that, what are you going to do with it? And then they don't know how they're going to feel about it.
Feel like you're talking about me. Feel like a stray.
But they're
My
looking in
younger
that mirror,
self.
and then I sit there sometimes 20 minutes and nothing is said. And sometimes I just want to say, okay, let's do something else. But then when I see that teardrop, I'll sit longer. And sometimes they're marathon sessions because that's what that person needs. There's I wish it were so easy that I could say everybody needs 50 minutes of my time. It's not. And I tell new people all the time, the person before you might run over. I can tell you, I'll do my best never to be late. However, I can tell you this, that the person before you might need a little bit more than what's, contrived for them.
And I want to hear from both of you on this, and I'll start with you, Dr. Brown. What would be your mirror moment with your younger self?
My mirror moment would be isn't God good?
Mm.
I think my younger self would look up at me and said, "It's God good." Brittany, I didn't imagine any of what I'm doing. Um, because my brother's death at a young age, my brother was 18. Um, I didn't think I was going to live past 18. And it wasn't something like I'm afraid to become 18. The death in my community was rampant. It wasn't anything I was telling you guys the other day to walk to school over someone who's unalive and then coming home and that same unalive person is there. They haven't come in the neighborhood to get them. And there are things I can't unsee. But even more than that, there are things that I can't unsmell. So my younger self would tell me, like, isn't God good? I mean, how did I end up? I didn't go in to become a clinical psychologist, literally, to help people at first. Learning, learning like without using the term in a clinical setting, like in a clinical vein. I'm addicted to learning. I love learning. Um, I tell my nephew, don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. So I love learning. So majoring in psychology, anthropology, minoring in education. I mean, uh, all of that was new to me. I was the first person in my family of five to go to college. I didn't, there were people around me who said, you should try this. And because I trusted them, I tried this and I tried that. I got into psychology to learn about me. Initially, I got in, I had some thoughts. I had some real bad thoughts. At 11 years old, I was preoccupied in my classroom, public school classroom, with murder. They said they knew who killed my brother, at least in the neighborhood, the whispers. So I was plotting revenge every day. I mean, I'm just sitting and I get so angry sometimes. I say angry, but now I know the difference between anger and rage. I was enraged. And then on top of where I was from and the economic challenges my mom had, people would pick on me with that rage. So now, I didn't initially fight back. My granddad being a farmer, and he only had a third grade farm school education. So he told me if anybody over in that schoolhouse bothered me, hit them first, hit them hard, and don't stop hitting them. And I honored my grandfather and not realizing he didn't go to public school. So I was getting into fights. And, the principal called my mom. No, Adolph didn't start it, but his teachers say he's a really good fighter. So one of my give backs to my community was a gym. I had an elementary school principal put me in a police boxing gym. I was the only kid in there for like a year. But I train police officers because I did, research on it later in life, because in my community, it was mutual disrespect. Uh, if you got hurt, you had to go to the front of the neighborhood because police didn't come in, or first responders, because they'd rock the ambulance and try to turn it over. But it wasn't precipitated. I mean, it was mutual disrespect. So now I'm in a gym where police officers aren't wearing uniforms. I can see them. I'm not running from them. They can see me. So, like, all the things that have happened in my life to bring me to this point, Brittany, I'm not that smart, but God is, and it's just brilliant. The things I'm an introvert. My nephew, the resting face that he has is the resting introvert face. He's an introvert too. It doesn't mean that we don't socialize and are shy. That means that introversion, extroversion, it's about where you get your energy. Meaning, I don't get my energy from large groups, and I'm with large groups all the time, you know. But I love solitude and silence. I love thinking. He loves the same. So that younger person for me would just, I know that younger person is proud, um, and knowing that, I have children, I have grandchildren, but that younger person is still important to me. I'm just getting started as far as I'm concerned.
I love that. How about you?
For me, it's pretty simple. I think as kids, you focus a lot on addiction in a negative light. Kind of piggyback off what Doc said, there's so many other great things you can actually be addicted to. You can be addicted to learning. You can addicted to be, wanting to be a great person. You could be addicted to sports or working out, and those are all positive lights. So I think once we kind of change the way we look at addiction, I think that was probably one of the biggest things for me. Now that I have kids, there's other things that you can actually be addicted to, that could actually affect you positively in your life. And for me now, one of my things that I'm addicted to are my sons, right? Um, making sure that they're aware of everything around them. I think that's one of the things we try to keep a deer in the headlights kind of thing. That's what happens with life. It's just so many things that happen. But honestly, again, just they're positive addictions, and that's okay. So I
Right,
think it's how you frame it.
right. And for your listening audience,
Your mirror, would that be your mirror moment with your younger self? Just letting you know that there's
Yeah, I think so. I think so because, I focused so much on addiction in a negative light as a child that now, as I'm older, I'm like, you know what? There's other things that you could be addicted to, and that's a more positive way to teach about addiction rather than only talk about it in a negative light, which is what always was brought up to me as I grew up. So it was, don't do this, don't do that, make sure you're not doing this, make sure you're not doing that. You create you scare people, you kind of scare yourself into, and I never wanted to grow up scared, like
right,
you were talking about before, kids being shut off or those kind of things because they're dealing with certain traumas. Um, there's positives in literally everything we do, whether and it could start as a negative, but it can be changed into a positive. So I think looking at addiction in a positive light is probably one of my mirror moments.
and if for the listening audience, addiction often defined as something that we're chemically predisposed to,
Right.
or something that has changed our brain in such a way that the brain requires it, not just needs it, and it interferes with our activities of daily living. So definitely, we know the definition of addiction. Um, However, I think what it is that we're saying is that we're so passionate about certain things, um, that all those chemical reactions happen, but it's for something good.
Right.
And have you started having conversations with your children about vulnerability and ways they can help to be able to express themselves in a healthy manner and be able to communicate those feelings? What has been that process or approach with your children with that?
Okay.
Me, I just try to breathe light into my boys. One of the things that they've known since they were kids is I'm real big on affirmations now, and them, learning who they are and saying who they can be. So, we go through a couple affirmations, and our main ones are, I tell them, I say, you're the greatest, you will be successful, you are the kindest, and you can change the world. But in order to do those things, you have to have good listening ears. You have to be a leader, not a follower. You have to be brave. You have to be confident. And then depending on which son, you have to be a good, big, or little brother. So that's my main thing with them, that I try to teach them now. Again, they're 2 and 7, so I don't try to, I'm not like, this is what you need to be doing. You know what I mean? Like, because it's still early for that, but I'm allowing for them to grow up and just be kids, which is something that I'm not sure if I was actually able to do as a kid myself, was to kind of just grow up and be kids, be a kid. Like Doc said, you're born into things as soon as you're here. This is your life now. And I think it took a while for me to realize that, again, that didn't have to be my life. I didn't have to live in that space. And for me now, it's all about showing my kids a different space, which is who I am now and who I know who I want to be, and being that positive role model for my kids.
You know what, Brittany, and we also will always, I mean, we're constantly thinking about what we can learn when the sun is shining.
Right.
But I like to ask people, what did you learn from that darkness?
Right.
I ask myself, when bad things happen, I try not to miss any lesson. When bad things happen, what did I learn from this? And that kind of, it, it, it gives you some sense of influence over a very random world.
I think it also helps you not fall into that victim mentality, because
Yes.
sometimes
Exactly.
it's very quick to be like, oh, why is me? I'm such a good
Right.
person. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And it's just like some things are just like, wow. Sometimes it's more so. I was speaking with another expert about this, how perfect is boring. Like there has to be sometimes some obstacles. Like every movie or book you watch, the protagonist goes through something. Like if it was
That's
just
right.
all just a piece of cake, you'd be like, all right, I'm gonna watch something else, or I'm gonna read a different book. But it has to be there because it helps strengthens you in a way. It builds the character. It helps you just be a little bit stronger mentally for whatever lies ahead. Like if you pray, for example, you want to become a millionaire or whatever, you may go through a season where money's tight because it's teaching you how to be better with what you have. So
Right.
you can be better when you do
Right.
become a billionaire. Like you can't get it because then you blow it and then you'll be sitting there like, well, God, I need more money again. Well, you have to have baby steps along the way. So
Right.
it teaches you those type of things. And I think that's so easy to fall into, especially when it's happening back to back, depending on certain seasons and what you're going through. But it all is about perspective. I know just like with so many people who are facing layoffs and stuff, just you may be sad, but it also get excited because that means it's a new chapter. Or I mean, especially if you're into faith and religion, that means God has something else for you. He's protecting you from something, or he wants you to invest in something else. So those are all just like having that perspective and not just being so much a woe is me. Don't get me wrong, some moments are literally that. Like there are really some heavy storms, but there are also some moments where it's also time to take some reflection, because as much as we like to be in the victim seat or run to hurry up and sit there, some of it is our own doing. We kind of shoot ourselves in the foot with some of the stuff that we do. And if we don't pay attention to our own behaviors, we're going to repeat that same cycle. It'll be the same script, just a different cast. So it's just very important to keep those things in mind as well. I don't want to hold you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I said that's the drop mic right there.
Yeah. I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I do want to leave with just for anyone who is, feeling like they are in a really tough time in their life and they feel like they're kind of feeling like they're at their wits' end. Dr. Brown, I want to start with you. What message would you give to them to help uplift them and help them realize and remember that they are loved, valued, and they still deserve to be here?
Well, I would want them first to know that they're not alone. I think oftentimes in darkness, because we can't see others willing to support us. So in life, we're either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or about to go into a storm. That's lifing. So I would share with them that one, they have a light, and their light would be sorely missed if it wasn't in this world. So storm dancing is real. Storms are like feelings. They don't last. So, wait it out. Um, I wake up every day ready for whatever, pretty much. And that's not like a negative outlook. Um, if it's a great day, it's a great day. If something happens, you know, I don't allow a bad moment to turn into a bad day. It's just a moment. And that was one of the biggest things I've taught my kids is how to reset. That's a lot of adults will allow the snowball effect, and it just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger from that one thing that happened early in the day. But that reset is real. And for anybody out there, um, we have seasons. We have seasons in nature. We have seasons as human beings. So wait the season out. And there'll be some seasons that are so great that you'll wish it could last forever. But the cycle of life it's seasonal.
Can we just go with that?
Yeah.
No, no.
I'm not gonna top that. So
Yeah, can we just go with that? That was
crazy.
good. No, I mean, it's funny because I feel the exact same way. I've been through certain things in my life as well, and you don't have to stay there. I think that's just like one of the you don't have to stay there, and I think the things that we go through shape who you are
That's right.
on a day-to-day basis as well. So go through it. Like he said, the storm is gonna pass, and then afterwards you can reflect on what that was, and then say, okay, how to inverse thinking. How do I now not put myself in that situation again? Because again, we are going to go through situations every single day, and all we can do is really learn from them at the end of the day. So I'll always like to tell people I play both sides of the fence. I want to know where you're coming from so that I can I can help you on the other side of the fence, whatever side that may be. So a lot of people go through things so that they can share those experiences with other people. And I think once you've overcome it, again, we can inverse think about it and help others not also go through that as well, and help yourself not go through it again as well. Yeah, it's okay to go through those things. Nobody's perfect. We're all going to go through things. Even your biggest role model is going to go through things. How did they go through it? How did they get through the storm?
Dr. Brown, is there anything else I didn't ask or we didn't get a chance to discuss that you think would be privy to this conversation?
No, I think I would only add that two of the most humbling things that any human being could ever do is something that we often run from, and that's self-reflection and self-correction. And I think if that's ever been important in our society, it's extremely important right now.
I agree. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking time to speak with me today. I appreciate it very much. Just a reminder that if you or someone you know is struggling with their mental health, to please, please, please get help. You can call or text 988 to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for any help. They're 24/7, so please go ahead and reach out to them. Thank you again so much for taking time to join me. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Until
Thank
next
you.
time,
Thank you.
everyone.